The Scout Guide is a city guide dedicated to supporting local businesses here in West Texas. Welcome to Inside the Scout Guide West Texas, a brief look into a few of the exceptional businesses right here in Midland and the entrepreneurs who lead those businesses. I'm your host, Jay Whitlow, and today I am pleased to welcome inside the Second Story studio from the Energy People Group. This is Mellisa Hooper. Mellisa, welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really pumped. The wind blew me in, so
Yes.
I'm really glad to be speaking with y'all today.
I'm grateful that the wind blew you in. You had came in and talked about the vortex had blown up your hair and everything.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I don't know if y'all ever saw, was it Firestarter with Drew Barrymore when she was a kid and like her hair was standing on
Right.
it? But it looks a little bit like that. So I got that like West Texas blowout.
That's why I'm wearing a hat, because the wind messes my hair up quite a bit. So I put that on. So, I'm excited for you to be here, to get to know you and to hear a little bit about your business and your involvement with the Scout Guide. But I got to ask, the very first time that I saw the Energy People Group, I was like, oh, she sells energy drinks.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's
I
energy,
should.
or she's into
Trademarked.
running or something. So tell me real briefly, what is the Energy People Group?
Yeah, so we're the premier HR consulting, recruiting, and training group in the Permian Basin, and we got the name. It's kind of it's a play on words. So we're clearly in the Petroplex, so of course the energy industry, but we do so much more than that. We work with nonprofits, we work with folks in the finance industry and folks that are not in the energy sector, and we really bring energy to companies, businesses, the bottom lines, and their people. So it's really more of a movement, if you will, than anything else.
Yeah, a movement. Okay. Well, I want to dive into that a little bit deeper, but first, viewers, listeners need to know a little bit about who you are.
Yeah.
So just give us a little bit of a snapshot of your life.
So I'm a native Midlander, born and raised. I am a Midland High Bulldog. And when I graduated, I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm never to return. And I think we all know how that story goes at this point.
Yep.
But I wound up going to school at the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. for international relations. And I graduated smack dab in the middle of the Great Recession. And it was a really interesting time to graduate, but not a lot of international relations companies were hiring then. So I tracked in with a group that did architecture and engineering called AECOM, and they actually did USAID, so it's humanitarian relief. It's a lot of kind of outreach to, a softer outreach to some of the countries around the world. You'll kind of see some, food relief, or, maybe it's kind of building a dam in places. But I actually wound up going to Afghanistan for them. And,
Okay.
I went out there. They had kind of some challenges recruiting locals in the provinces, and it was a social outreach program. And so that was the point, was to help establish local jirgas. And so recruitment was very important to that. So because I did a lot of the kind of business development recruiting, because to do a USAID bid, most people don't know this, you actually basically build the project and you staff it, you create the job descriptions, the comp plan, you have the people, the resumes, it's ready to go. So when they select you as the winner, you can implement. And so we were basically building over and over and over, dozens and hundreds of, business plans and businesses and implementing them. And when you won the bid process, you got to implement them, I should say. And so I had done that many times over. So they sent me out there. And, the first thing that I noticed when I walked into the HR office is that, there was not a lot of HR process and procedure. And so to fix recruiting, I had to fix HR. And so I kind of just became a fixer. I'm a, problem solver, can do kind of gal. And so that's kind of where I got my start. And then I went all around the world with the company. I went to, Doha, I went to Liberia, I went to other, fun destinations. And then I wound up running their North American early career development and recruiting program. So
Impressive.
found my way back to Midland. And in the pandemic, I had been liberated, is how I call it, after a merger with my former employer happened. And so I was like, you know what, there's got to be other small to medium-sized businesses in the Permian Basin that could really benefit from strategic human resources training and recruiting.
Right. Wow. Okay, a lot to unpack there. So let's start with, what was it like living in D.C.?
So it was amazing. There's an energy there that is very different. People don't realize that there's constant movement. Because every 2 years, 4 years, every election cycle, you've got groups of people moving in and out. So it was great. It was dynamic, super multicultural, and it's really interesting to watch how our government works. There's so much that happens on K Street. There's so much that happens with all of these other organizations, these non-governmental organizations, that think tanks. Everything. Really, what makes our democracy tick. It was fascinating to watch.
Did you live in D.C. proper, or did you live outside?
So I lived in D.C. proper, and then I lived in Virginia.
Okay.
So which is literally right across the river. It'd be like Midland to Odessa.
Yeah.
And so I know.
Bet it's not like Odessa.
Hey, listen, love to our Odessa fans, but no, it was not. There's water.
Yeah, there's water. I've been to D.C. a number of times now. My kids graduated from Liberty in Lynchburg.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so we've gone up there, and then we tour. So the first time we went was right after COVID. It was in 21, so they had just barely kind of opened things up.
Yes.
Half of the Smithsonians were still closed. Then this last time we went just this past May for my daughter's graduation, and so it was wide open. It was great. I love that place. Where was your favorite place to eat in D.C.?
Oh my gosh, I really loved Old Ebbitt's.
Yes, Old
it's
Ebbitt's
so good.
Grill.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's so good. But there was actually, if I say that, that's my favorite restaurant. There was a hot dog stand that this guy named Manoush ran on the GW proper campus, and there was something magical about the things that he made at 1 a.m. in the morning on his little hot dog stand, and he was
Right.
famous, and so the line would wrap around the block.
Nobody told me
Oh
about
my gosh! Well,
that one, so.
you would be in company of probably some very interesting characters.
I bet.
Weekend to get a hot dog.
In
from
fact,
him,
when we
but-
were there, it was May of this year, and we were told don't go around GW because of protests. That's when we had all the Israel and
Yep.
stuff protesting, and so we went because I'm like,
You're
no,
like, yeah, let's go
I'm
see it."
going to go see this. I want to see for myself. And we got there was no protesting. It was not as popular as it was a week or two before we
Yeah.
got there and stuff.
It's
but-
a very, part of the reason why folks go there is they have an incredible communications, poli-sci, international relations. You get people who are naturally geared to be interested in world events. And so I
Right.
think you will see folks participating, volunteering at the RNC and the DNC. And,
Right.
it's so active in a different way because I think that school really attracts that type of student.
Right.
When I was there, the Red Sox had won their first game, or their first World Series. I'm going to get so much hate for that because I know I just missaid something.
Their first
But,
game.
Yeah,
That's
their-
good. I
well,
like
not
that.
their first game, but their first World.
First win
Listen,
ever.
Red Sox Nation, do not come for me. But it was the World Series, and they had won. It was the first time since
Right.
the Babe Ruth curse,
Right.
Which also I hope I got right. But anyways, there was a flipped car. People were in the commons, and it was quite the sight to see. So from American sports to world events, we cover it all.
You got it all. Okay, outside of the U.S., you've traveled multiple places.
Yeah.
Favorite place to travel?
Oh my gosh. One of my favorite places that I had the opportunity to go was it was Chiloé in Chile, and it's got such an incredible intersection of culture and just kind of world events. Did you know that there's 500 different varieties of potatoes?
No, to me, there's only one potato.
I know,
It's
and it's it's a French
Chick-fil-A
fry and.
waffle fry.
Yeah, waffle fry from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
But what people think is that the origin of the potato was on Chiloé because the biodiversity there, because you kind of go back as you have the origin of something and then it spreads out, you kind of
Right.
get less and less diversity. Well, they've kind of traced the origin back to Chiloé. And there's such a diversity of potatoes there, but
Right.
they've got this really interesting cross section of culture between. There's a large German community there, and so the architecture and then the indigenous language and kind of all of these things intersect
Right.
to make a world where, the houses are on stilts over the water, and it's like really incredible. And you've got, it's so close to the Patagonia. And you look out and it's like everything's familiar, but it's not. And so it almost feels
Like a movie.
like like a movie or like an alien world,
Yeah.
in a good way, where it's like, man, maybe like I was transported to, a different planet or something. Like
Wow.
it was super interesting. So everything kind of felt familiar, yet wildly new at the same time.
Well, now that we know about your traveling, we know about kind of your DC.
My love of Chick-fil-A,
your-
waffle
and
fries, yes,
Chick-fil-A,
thank you.
Right. You told us a little bit about the Energy People Group at the beginning. So I kind of want to start diving into the business and stuff. What are some challenges that you faced when you came back from all of the world traveling and saw the need to open this business? What were some of those challenges in the early days?
Oh gosh. So shout out to Zekin's Story. This is an incredible space that's here. When the business started, I literally walked across, the street at the time, and kind of started up the company with my business partner at the time, and we really needed a place to go that was professional, where people would take us seriously. So it's really interesting. We're such a digital world today, but what people don't realize is, an address to have your business is so important to register, to, kind of do your business documentation. I mean, there was kind of a lot of that where it was never my goal or plan to kind of open up a boutique consulting business in Midland, Texas. That's not, I'm so blessed to be here right now, but it's not something that I ever had planned for myself. And so I was learning on the fly. And so just kind of some of those things about, just kind of, just basically, where do I register? Go to the Department of State for the state of Texas, all of that kind of stuff. But also, this is a services industry. What I sell is time and the value I bring in that amount of time. And what I was not prepared for was, for example, like the Small Business Association, really is geared towards businesses that have physical assets. So taco truck, slime, I'm not selling a bucket of slime. I don't have a taco truck. I don't have a compressor. And so some of these, products that are, geared towards, small business startup are really for businesses that are kind of in the tangibles. And I am a professional services business. And so that was also an education in kind of talking with folks that I didn't really expect. The other challenge is there's no balance when you're starting up a business, especially in the pandemic, and you're just trying to figure it out. You find ways to kind of find peace and get rest and all of that. But the biggest challenge was finding a way to turn off without crashing. Because we still had to hit the pavement, the next day, kind of figure things out, bring things in. And I'm also in a very unique space. I don't think there's a lot of companies, as I've, kind of networked and spoken with other professionals, there's a lot of recruiting agencies, but not a lot of them do like the HR consulting services. There's a lot of training centers, but not a lot of them do the recruiting portion. There's very few groups that combine all three. That's going to be necessary for not just the Permian Basin, but for the U.S. as we go forward into some of the really challenging demographics that we're going to have in our workforce.
Right. That's a great point. And I want to ask you, how do you then, knowing that you kind of are in that space and there's not a lot that do all of those things, how do you stay competitive to where you can show other people that like you need what my services are, because we do provide all of those?
Yes, it's such a great question, and it's my biggest daily challenge is because if you think about it, I am a small business and I have at least 3 business lines. Think about that. Think about starting up a small business and being like, well, out of the gate, I think I'm going to do 3 divisions. That sounds like a terrible idea. That's a lot of work, and you've got to figure out each baby business under your overarching business. How I do that is I'm just constantly educating. They're all 3 tie together, and depending on what the pain point is, I can educate on the other 2. You can't divorce the 3 of them.
Okay.
And so it's that education piece.
That's a good point. How many staff do you have?
So we have a staff of 2 people. We've recently expanded our consulting, our consultant roster. We're really excited about that. We really want to bring in additional expertise that might not be found in the area. We're really excited to kind of offer some things that, folks might not really realize that they need in their business. And so one of the things that we're really excited about is a training center that we're opening that's going to focus on professional development. A lot of times, folks are given, performance improvement plan, or maybe I hit, the mark for 80%, of the qualifications of this job, but maybe I don't have this certificate or these other 20% of the skills. And there's, there's a need for a resource where people can come and do point in time or professional training. And so we're really working to kind of bring that to the Permian Basin, here in downtown Midland.
When will that launch?
So we have soft launched it, and it has been really incredible to see the community respond.
Right.
We are booking up in our soft launch, so we're really excited. We'll probably launch that in February of next year, so February 2025.
That's awesome. I applaud you for that. That's great. Good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you any baseball knowledge questions.
Yeah, 'cause
you
clearly,
you threw out the whole Boston won their first game ever,
Don't come for me.
just a couple of years ago. But is there, maybe think back to your time at college, at GW, living in D.C. or maybe abroad, that maybe you had a disappointing setback and you learned something from that, something that you can share with someone who might be listening and watching that's in it right now? And what would you share with them of how you made it through that setback?
Oh my gosh. So we mentioned earlier that I graduated in the middle of the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. So like literally there were no jobs. There were no jobs, posted, nothing available. Right. And I had this really kind of niche degree. And, most of the jobs were supposed to be in D.C. or in places like D.C., and there were no jobs. And so I finally found one. It was for a lobbying group on K Street, and they needed a legislative assistant. And so I applied. I made it through all the interviews. I got the job. And I arrive on the first day, and they're like, here, you are going to sit at this front desk, and you are going to check people in. And it wound up being a secretary job, but it was titled legislative assistant. But I was very young and positive at the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the best secretary. Also, there were no jobs. I'm going to be the best secretary there is. Secretary is not my gift. Secretaries who are out there, folks who are in kind of in that assistant role, it's a gift. I don't have it. And needless to say, I didn't do a great job, not for lack of trying, though. And I wound up being released from my first job ever after 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks. 2 weeks. I had a banana on my desk, and that is fact. I had a banana on my desk.
What was the banana for?
It was my snack.
That was your snack?
It was my snack.
It was a banana.
It was a banana, and it was on my desk. And because there was because I was a receptionist.
It didn't represent anything?
No, I mean, other than some of the monkeys that run around DC, so, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, so I had a banana. I think it wasn't working out, and then I think the banana was the last straw.
That could have been the last straw.
But here's the funny thing. So they kindly, just say, hey, Mellisa, this just isn't working out. I'm devastated, but I'm like, you know what? Okay. And I go and I clean the dishes, and, I'm trying to leave everything nice and kind of leave a handover note. It's a very small office. But a few days before, they had kind of sent out an email to the few staff there, and they were saying, oh, hey, we've got these 2 chairs for sale. Does anyone want them? And I was like, you know what? I've got my first apartment, post-school, I'll take them. And they were for a steal, $100. The thing is, it was a historical building on K Street. And so I had to try to fit these chairs in this elevator as I'm leaving, as I've been terminated from my first job ever. And it's a tiny historical, elevator. It's maybe 4 square feet, 6 square feet. It's something super tiny. And here I'm shoving this chair in there as I'm trying to get them down the street and kind of leave my first employer. It was, so all of that to say is it was devastating at the time, and I was heartbroken, and I felt like such a failure. Man, I couldn't even keep, my job for the first 2 weeks because of a banana on my desk. How could I have not realized not to keep the banana on my desk? Here's the thing. Your gifts are your gifts. And clearly being a secretary was not mine. And sometimes what's the biggest heartbreak, what feels like the biggest setback, you haven't been broken, you haven't been buried, you've been planted.
Good word. How do you balance your personal life with work Like I'm sure you love movies. I'm sure you love to travel. I'm sure you love things. What do you like to do in your spare time, and then how do you balance that with your work?
You know, I tend to be a pretty honest person, so I will say when you're starting a business, sometimes there's not a lot of balance. I live, breathe, eat, sleep this business 24/7. What I will say is it's not balance, it's more blend. And so one of the things, there's 3 things that I do. It's going to sound really basic, and you're going to think I'm such a loser, and that's totally fine. But the first
Never.
is the first is to make sure that like I'm eating, because it's really easy to, like, you get really busy in the morning, or you work through lunch, or hey, like, oh, I'm just going to work a little bit later, and then I get home and it's like, I don't really feel like, eating anything, or whatever. Like, proper nutrition and taking care of your physical is super important. The second thing is going to be, I almost hate to say it because I'm like, I don't need this, but it's meditation. It's meditation, mindfulness, whatever we want to call it. And we've got to find better words than those 2 words, because like my type A personality is like, I don't need that
I don't
stuff.
need
What does that even do?
meditation.
Yes, you do,
Yeah.
people. Yes, you
Yeah.
do. And the reason is it will help repattern your brain. It'll help you get to a different thought state, because when you are so on an issue or so in a situation, and that's what you are as an entrepreneur and as a small business owner, sometimes you really can't escape it. There's sometimes no boundaries, right? And so how to, in a situation where there's not a lot of, boundaries with work, or maybe it's a blend, how do I get that mental space? And so that's really helped me with anxiety. It's helped me order my thoughts. Sometimes it just helps me take a nap. And then the third thing is your support network. And what I really mean by that is people who have nothing to do with business. I'm not talking about a networking lunch. I'm not talking about, something that could turn into a business lead. I'm talking about I've got 5 friends from high school, and, we'll go do dinner, we'll try to meet up for lunch. And I found myself being like, I don't have time for this. Like, I've got all these other things I could be doing. And I got into a place where I kind of isolated myself just because I was so focused on the business all the time, and every interaction I had some type of business purpose. So the third thing that I do to stay balanced is I make time for people who care about me and who've known me, and who, while they support me, there's no business reason for me to meet with them. That's for me. And that's something that I find a lot of entrepreneurs do. Like, we get really focused, we cut things out because we've got to do more and more and more. And those 3 things really keep me stable.
Wow. How do you handle risk, maybe uncertainty? You had the business during the pandemic, and a lot of people have said, the pandemic made me start a business because I had nothing else.
Yeah.
How do you handle uncertainty?
With a lot of Tums.
Tums.
Tums,
And meditation.
Tums and meditate. Like, yeah, this is going to be.
Tums and meditation.
I know, yeah, these are
Yeah.
trademarked. No, truly, it's about making calculated risks, and you're going to get some things right, and you're going to get some things wrong. Like I said, I never started out with the idea of, running a small business, boutique business, consulting business in the Permian Basin. Certainly didn't plan on doing that during a pandemic. Certainly didn't plan on doing that, in any iteration of my life. And so how I handle risk is it's calculated. And how I calculate that risk is, I look at, what is the possibility of losing, or and then what are the degrees of those, and then what happens if I win or it goes successful, and the degree of those. And for the most part, taking the gamble and taking the risk has paid off, but not without consequences. No one bats 100. No one bats 100.
There's your baseball reference.
There,
Again.
listen, and
Yeah.
I'm going to mess it up too. But no one bats 100. And so the most important thing about taking a risk is forgiving yourself when you fail and learning fast. Fail fast, learn fast.
Fail fast, learn fast.
And forgive yourself when you do fail.
I love that. It's a great word. I want to ask you, what's the most rewarding part of your job? Is it the people that you serve? Is it things that have happened to the business? What would you say is that one most rewarding piece?
Oh my gosh. For me, this business is not about making money. It's not about, making a name. It is about the impact in people's lives. Whether it's a business owner and we've just solved some tricky HR compensation, employee relations issue, and seeing, oh my gosh, like we fixed it, we did it, things can move forward. Whether it's placing that candidate in that life-changing position, or whether it's doing training and development where folks kind of have that connection and that aha moment of, oh gosh, so this is why I think this way, or I've learned something about myself or my competencies or the things that I can do. So it's really truly, the joy for me comes in connecting humans and other people with their potential.
You shared a couple times in our conversation, and my mind was like, what did she just say? You said boutique business. So my mind, and maybe it's because my guy are weird, I go to
Shopping.
Clothes and shopping and, unique items. So could you explain?
Yeah.
What do you mean by boutique business?
So boutique means there's not a lot of this type of business out there. It's so think of boutique hotels, right? It's typically a unique experience, a unique location, a unique building. It's not going to be like your
Traditional.
your Holiday Inn.
Okay.
So it tends to be something that's unique and special and not found a lot of places.
Okay.
No, thank you for that, because I think it's a phrase in the kind of the consulting world, and it's really important to think about how folks understand that.
Yeah, I've heard people say that and share it, and I'm like, I just want to make sure that I'm tracking well. And
Talking about blouses, or are we talking about business?
What are we talking about? How do you stay up with the new trends and the change in the industry?
It's a really good question. I have a data-driven brain, believe it or not, and one of the things that I find really fascinating about the intersection of where I'm at right now and the business is at, and our outside world, is we are facing a host of really strong demographic trends that are coming to fruition. The pandemic accelerated these trends. I actually spoke about this the other day at PASB's 70th anniversary symposium last week, and we are hitting the silver tsunami, which is essentially the baby boomers are all essentially retiring. It's going to feel en masse. It's not, from one day to the next. But what happened with COVID is folks took retirement packages. They moved out of the area. They've switched jobs. They've gone to, partial employment. But we physically, demographically, and I call it a body problem. We do not physically have enough bodies in our working population to replace the people who are leaving. And we're not even talking about skills alignment. We're just talking about a human being. And so what I find really fascinating about where we're at right now is those trends. And so I really keep an eye on unemployment numbers. We're constantly overemployed. So how that's coming across is, oh, I post a job and no one's applying, or this generation, Gen Z's lazy, they don't want to work, they're not applying because I don't have anyone applying to my jobs. And really, we don't have the population, especially out here. We have a very strong economy. We're super blessed with that. So I really watch the data. And I also kind of, keep up. There's a lot happening in neuroplasticity and kind of understanding our human bodies and our human brains.
Sure.
And I don't know if we do a good job of intersecting business with that knowledge. I mean, we teach calculus, we teach, chemistry, we teach all these really advanced concepts, but we don't really get to understand, how our bodies physically react under stress, how we make decisions, what are those things that are firing and happening with our neurons. So how I stay up with all of that is I really kind of take topic research and I just delve into it. I love it. I find it super fascinating.
What is your long-term vision for the Energy People Group?
The long-term vision is to be a integrated, holistic tool for workforce needs in the Permian Basin. I can't do it alone. There's tons of other organizations and resources out here that will help achieve that. But truly, the future of recruiting, which is the entry point to all things HR or people operations, the future of recruiting is retention and training because of the body problem that we just discussed.
Right.
And so in the future, instead of going to market, we are going to have to look at the talent that we have on our bench, or see, there's a sports references.
There it is.
On our bench, and see like, hey, what competencies do they need? How can I build or grow this person into what I need? Because if I go to market, I very likely will not find it. So the vision is to be really an integrated resource for HR, recruiting, and training. Get a really good recruiter on your side, because the future of just finding talent is going to be so challenged.
Yeah. Where are you involved in the community? Do you guys volunteer? Do you support nonprofits? Where do you land in that space?
Yeah, no, I am such a supporter of nonprofits in our community. We've done a lot of work for nonprofits as a business, but I also personally feel it's very important, not only as a citizen of this community, but also, it's important to give back. And it's important to give back of our gifts, and the things of, to whom much is given, much is expected. So I serve on 3 boards in town. I am Executive Vice President-elect for the Junior League of Midland. I am on the Midland Community Theater Board, and I'm also on the Arts Council of Midland board, and I'm, kind of helping head up the Scarborough Lineberry house project and renovation. So, Danny and the team do a great job, over there, and it's going to be amazing and such a treasure to our community. So truly, any moment that I can give back, outside of my working hours, I truly want to, because these nonprofits make this a wonderful place to live.
Wow. So all the places that you've stopped down for work overseas, here, what's been one thing that's contributed the most to your success?
Oh gosh. I think I made a decision to be unstoppable. And I made a decision that no matter what happens, it's all going to be okay. So back to that risk piece. Risk in our minds can sometimes be a prison of fear and anxiety, and it's actually a learning process. And so what's really important, about all of that is to make the decision to be unstoppable. This is my goal. This is my business. This is what we are contributing to this community. These are the things that I feel passionate about and that are important. Helping people reach their potential, helping businesses reach their potential and increase the bottom line. You have to be unstoppable, because you're going to hit setbacks. It's hard. It is hard. But I made a decision to be unstoppable, and that's the biggest thing I've learned.
Wow. All right. I'm going to give you a platform now to speak to everybody listening and watching. So, new entrepreneur has started a business. They've just launched it. They're 1 week in, 1 month in. They're having some highs, having some lows. What would be your advice to them when they're having those strong moments, when they're having those weak setbacks?
Yeah.
What would be your advice?
My advice would really be to find a touchstone, find something to center yourself, whether it's a poem, whether it's a phrase, whether it is one of those damn meditations, although they're very effective.
Meditation, yeah.
Find a touchstone. It's actually better, if it's something that you can say to yourself in your head. Mine for a while is, I'm Mellisa Hooper. I don't know why I'm here doing what I'm doing, but God told me it's important, and I am unstoppable.
That needs to be on a T-shirt.
I know, or a mug or something, or
a mug, yeah.
like
Or banana.
Yeah, or a banana, or a Red Sox jersey.
Yeah.
But the more that it's kind of short and you can remember it in a moment of panic, it'll center you. The other thing, if I could give any professional advice to any new entrepreneur, whether it's me or your own research or another resource, I really encourage you to get what I call the trifecta. It's actually what I've built our HR consulting on, and it's your employee handbook. It is a compensation plan, which includes, comp data and job descriptions, and then you need your org chart. Those 3 things are the architecture for your business, and it's really hard to fail when you get that right.
The Scout Guide has been a really good resource for a lot of people. I think they're in their 3rd volume now with the red edition. Is this your first time in the Scout Guide?
It is.
So what would you say, you may not have had enough track record in the Scout Guide, but what are you hoping that the Scout Guide brings to your business? Why did you want to join and be in it?
So there was an employee at another company that I worked at, and he used to tell me, "Oh, well, you work for the human remains department. HR is where productivity goes to die." And I really wanted to change that narrative. I wanted human resources and people operations to be really approachable, and seen as strategic and important for your business's success. And so what I really hope to get out of the Scout Guide is to get in front of people who might not traditionally think about, human resources or recruiting or any of this stuff as a strategic partner. And I really wanted to get people thinking about things like succession planning, professional training and development, these really key issues that are coming up in a way that was approachable. And you might look at my ad and be like, oh, she looks, friendly, maybe slightly competent. I might want to give her a call or reach out and just see what she can do for my business.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by the studio and
thanks so
hanging
much
out
for
with
having
us
me.
for a little bit. You shared some great insight. I think that a lot of people are going to gain some stuff from that. Congratulations on being in the Scout Guide, and thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for us. A big shout out to Chris producing Second Story for the studio space, and also to Claire Ramirez, who runs the Scout Guide West Texas. Like, share, and subscribe on all of our platforms. Thanks again for joining with us on Inside the Scout Guide West Texas.